Hey there guys, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and I recently made a video where I discussed whether or not Tides of War was working. In fact, there should be something on screen around about now for you. And I found really that Tides of War just, in my opinion, simply wasn't offering new experiences to players that they would actually enjoy. That was until today, and that is of course the Battle of Hanut. And I've got to say, this is single-handedly, in my opinion, the best grand operation that exists in Battlefield 5 right now, and definitely serves as a benchmark for what Battlefield 5 should be looking for further down the line. So let's talk about it. Battle of Hanut does effectively everything I wanted Tides of War to do. It gave us a brand new experience, it gave us something that was, completely unexpected in terms of action and pace, and it's everything that Tides of War should be in the sense that it's a radical redesign of things that we already had in game, from Panzerstorm and Arras, just simply made better with a real focus on action intensity and fun. So, all in all, this is something that I think a lot of people were looking for. When we pictured a World War II battlefield, we were picturing, visceral battlegrounds. We were picturing, a wartime experience, lots of tanks, lots of planes, lots of troops rolling out into any given location. And a lot of the maps just simply don't feel like that. Don't get me wrong, they're pretty good maps and they're pretty good fun, but except for Devastation, I think it's really difficult to say that any of them really feel like World War II. Any of them really resemble the kind of World War II maps and experiences that we were looking for. And this is completely changed here. In Battle of Hanut, we're looking at these big open fields with good urban spaces and good objective points where actual relatively urban infantry combat can take place. This has never been something incredibly simple. It's never been a case in Battlefield where you can hit the nail on the head as well as this has. In Battlefield, it's always been about finding that perfect balance between really strong core infantry gameplay, lots of combined arm things, and, you want that good tank and plane combat, and you want that World War II feel without things being too chaotic. If you're like me, you really enjoyed Battlefield 1 in terms of what it was trying to achieve by making Battlefield feel more like a war. I think we can safely say there's lots of situations in games like Battlefield 3 and 4 and Hardline, especially when the environment completely changed, where it didn't really feel like you were in an intense combat situation. It felt like you were in this sort of generic sandbox that was undamaged, untouched. And I think Battlefield 1 resolved a lot of those problems, but simply in an environment that I felt, at least on the 64-player version of Operations, that was too intense, it was too chaotic, and it didn't allow for skillful players to really shine. Now, we have really hit the nail on the head here in Battlefield 5, because Battlefield 5 does overhaul a lot of what Battlefield 1 did badly, but in the same time, I think we've lost a lot of that World War feel. I think we've lost, the kind of experiences and action and intensity and scenery that made Battlefield 1 incredibly special. Hitting that mark is never particularly easy, and it is a fine line between, a game that looks good and a game that plays good. And if you can really get it right down the middle like the Battle of Hanut does here, then you're doing incredibly well. Another thing this does really well is adding new experiences. We do have a nighttime version of a map in the game right now, but Panzerstorm is a map that definitely benefits from being in the dark, and it benefits well because not only does it shift around how combat plays out, it also just makes the map better. The problem with Panzerstorm was always those big open spaces where you could get sniped from anywhere, and the massive glaring daylight of the entire situation just made it impossible to really get a good grip as terms of an infantryman on what was going on. Here we have a nighttime setting where infantry can actually move around incredibly well in an almost stealth-like environment in some respects. I definitely managed to pull off lots of flanks by using the bushes and tree lines in the middle of the night, and it's done in the sense that a lot of people enjoy something as simple as a change in the scenery. As simple as turning the night from day, from the day from night. Stuff like that works incredibly well. And I'm not saying it's necessarily easy from a development standpoint, because when you change things like that, you have to look at things like textures, things that are standing out of place, character lighting, and all sorts in between. But that kind of stuff is the stuff that makes Battlefield work really well. And I feel like this deserves its own point. Intensity. A lot of people were disappointed about some of the combined arms aspects of Battlefield 5, and I understand that. I don't think Battlefield 1 was my favourite game, but it definitely tried really hard to integrate lots of good tank combat and lots of good plane combat in the skies, whilst maintaining the infantry side of things. And Battlefield 3 and 4 have tried this retrospectively too, and it's always a bit hit and miss, but this map here does it pretty perfectly. You've got those really good enclosed spaces for infantry to operate in, but ultimately the big open spaces allow 6-7 tanks aside per team to battle it out, and you can really feel it. The shells flying everywhere, the tracers flying everywhere. This is a battlefield experience. This is exactly what people think about when they initially pictured Battlefield 5 plus World War II. And I'm not trying to, discredit some of the other maps, because maps like Narvik are, in terms of a multiplayer shooter, good maps, but they don't feel like Battlefield maps. They don't have the Battlefield feeling that I think a lot of people got accustomed to in Battlefield 1. Now, I'm not saying Battlefield 1's perfect, because you guys know my opinions very strongly on that, but ultimately, that feeling needs to be present, and that feeling of intensity needs to be present to really make people understand what Battlefield is in terms of an FPS experience. It's not just another run around the shooter, it's not just something that entirely fixates on your abilities as an individual player. It is an environment, it's a scenery, and the reason people kept playing things like Battlefield 4 and 3 over and over again was because some of the maps like Operation Firestorm, for example, were great at making you feel like you were part of a war, but also offered incredibly good gameplay too. And that's exactly what we're getting in this grand operation, and I really hope that this is something that they look at in terms of, this is what we did incredibly well, and this is why we should carry on doing things like this. So troops, that's about it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. Let me know what you think of the Battle of Hunter in the comments section below. Is this a map you enjoy? Are you having any gripes with it? And what do you want to see from the future of Tides of War? As always troops, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.